Alright, if you watched the last episode, then you probably already know we're trying to get our steering back into shape, but you might not know that we've been messing around with this thing for almost a whole week. It took me a good solid day to get the lock valve swapped in the inside helm, a couple of days for us to bleed the system, a couple of days for us to just find enough fluid to bleed the system, and really a good solid day of me crying and cursing this thing because it still doesn't work right. There's no air left in the lines, but we still have some spongy steering and some flat spots. Right here, this is the hydraulic cylinder, and the best I can tell is that the seals on the inside are leaking. So this thing's got to get taken apart and rebuilt. The good news is I do have a kit to rebuild it, got all the parts I need, but the bad news is that I don't exactly have the tools to do it. A lot of the stuff we're dealing with on this boat right now, we've had this sort of nagging feeling that we just did these types of projects not too long ago, but most of these things, turns out we did them about 10 or 11 years ago. So the moral of the story is nothing lasts forever, especially on a boat. In our last episode, we dove into some more projects, just trying to get our mighty ship back out on the high seas. And this time around, you can still find us all the way down in southern Mexico, doing some more of the same. And to start out, I've got to spend a little time in our dungeon removing our hydraulic steering cylinder so we can replace some leaking internal seals. So this is the hydraulic cylinder in all of its glory. Came out of the boat pretty easy, and it's actually a pretty easy thing to rebuild if you've got the tools to take it apart. I rebuilt this about 11 years ago. In my day job, back when I had one, I was in construction, mainly metalwork, so I had access to a full metal shop. And the specialty tools that I needed, I could just make them. I had a metal shop, but I don't have access to any of that stuff anymore. So on the end of this cylinder, there's these two set screws. It takes a special wrench. You remove those set screws. That wrench fits in there and around the shaft of the cylinder. You take off the end cap, pull everything apart, replace the seals, pop it back together. It's pretty simple, but you got to be able to take it apart, which at the moment I can't. So we're going to do our best to find a place that can. In Tapachula, which is about a half hour away from here, there is a hydraulic shop. They specialize in farm equipment. This is close enough. So we're going to take it there tomorrow, and hopefully they can kind of rush this thing through. Once the steering goes back together, we're pretty much free to leave. The rest of the stuff that's got to be done, it can wait. We're enough of a sailboat at that point. The only hitch right now, though, is we do have a pretty big weather system that's going on out here in the Tuanepex. We've got roughly a week before that dies down, and then it'll be a small window to get across before the next system comes through. But right now it's actually a big one, so we're sort of stuck anyways. And because we're stuck, we might as well work on crossing some things off our to-do list. And since Brenda still had her beast of a sewing machine out from fixing up all of our canvas, she jumped into making some sunshades and new mosquito screens for all of our hatches. pile of screens and new sunshades made, of course you gotta show off some of your handiwork.
Oh, dude, I'm like that.
For the couple of days Brenda was working on her stuff, I mostly tried to stay out of her way by making sure everything else on this boat was working like it should. Just by judging from the rust on this lock, I didn't have high hopes for our outboard. But some fresh gas, one quick pull, and she was running like a champ.
That's a miracle.
Some of the projects on our list were necessities, and some they're just to make our life a little better. Because really, who doesn't like better tasting drinking water? Especially down here in the tropics, where we go through it like crazy. And some of these projects are simply because after 7 months of sitting in the storage yard, this boat was pretty gross. And some of these projects, well, they took a little teamwork. After a few days of pretty strong effort, we made it through our entire to-do list. Well, almost. Time for your examination. Well, cylinder's back. That means it's a day spent in the dungeon. But it also means this is almost a full-fledged steering sailboat again. After everything was reinstalled and reattached, it was a quick bleed of the lines to get all the air out of the system, and then we pretty much just hoped for the best. Our steering works. It's a miracle. And it is actually a miracle. I had a rebuild kit for this cylinder, and the numbers on the rebuild kit match up to the numbers that are stamped on the cylinder, but the seals in the kit were nowhere even close to fitting. And there's none around here, so we're kind of screwed. But again, in Mexico, it all comes down to who you know. We made friends with a guy who works here, and he just happened to say, I know a guy who can fix anything. He fixes all the fishing fleet when nobody else can. So that guy came, picked up our cylinder. A couple of days later, he brought it back, and it works. But I don't exactly know how he fixed it. My Spanish is fairly good, but once it gets technical, I'm a little bit lost. So he either told me he did the same kind of fix on some of the old fishing boats, or he's told me he stuffed our cylinder full of fish. I can't tell, but it works. So at this point, we're a working sailboat again. We can get out of here whenever the weather's good, which it's not at the moment. The window we had, it just kind of never materialized. Well, it did, but it's too short for us to make it through. It takes us about 2 days to get from here to the next port, which is Watoko, and we kind of need a good window to make that 2-day jump. So maybe we should talk about weather, which we'll do in a minute, because right now Brenda's making me a new wedding dress, which looks pretty awesome.
Making your wedding dress. It's gonna be so scratchy and itchy. You're gonna be the prettiest girl at the ball. Yep. But you're gonna be itching inappropriately. Stuff's so itchy.
As much as it looks like Brenda's making me a wedding dress, it's not. We've already gotten married. I'll do it again though, in a second. But she's actually making a cockpit enclosure for mosquitoes, because mosquitoes are insane.
It's really a wedding dress. It's gonna be so pretty.
So this is going to surround the whole cockpit. So in days, or in areas like this, where it's hot and muggy all the time, we can still sit out in the cockpit when it's nice and cool at night. Right now we can't. The bugs are insane. After the basic framework was stitched up, it was a quick dry fit to figure out attachment points, and pretty soon we'd be having bug-free, cool evenings spent in our cockpit.
Home Depot, and if we got some of those like weights that are on even the curtains,
Yeah.
then it would weight it down, and if it goes crazy, it would hold it.
All right, before we get into the weather, we've been working on the boat for about a month. We've been back about a month or so. And I have to say, all the stuff we've done in this last month, there's 2 things that I'm most excited about. 3 things I'm most excited about. Actually, 4 things. First, we got rid of bugs. Got to get rid of bugs. I hate bugs. Second, it's the steering, which is even better. We got to have steering. Steering's pretty important. But the third is Brenda's new sunshade she made, which I'll show you when we're sailing. And the fourth, and the thing that I'm probably most excited about, is this bug enclosure. I hate mosquitoes, so I'm kind of excited about this thing. And I'll show you that when it's done too. It's getting pretty close. So if you're not familiar with the Tehuantepec, that's the region that's just north of us, right up here. It's a place with some pretty notorious weather. It's a spot where a lot of hurricanes form. And this is a place where nasty weather starts. So the wind basically comes across this narrow stretch of land from the Caribbean. It funnels across and gains strength as it goes across. So when it hits this Tehuantepec region, it sort of explodes. Right now we've got 40 to 50 knots out there, and that's kind of a common occurrence, especially for this time of year. So the hitch for us right now is that really there is no weather window for at least another week or so, and the one that's coming up is pretty slim as well. So we're gonna have to judge that as we get a little closer. So for the next week or so, we've got to figure out what to do. There's always stuff to do around here, but we're kind of ready for a break of this thing. I don't know, we'll see. I guess we'll get into that next time. Thanks for watching. See you next week. And that's about it for this episode. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.